This week on New to You, High Fantasy, Part 4, Jeff Smith's Bone. Hey everybody, welcome to the New to You Show. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt. With me is...
Keith Allen Vincent first.
Julian Cage.
Brian Jones.
All right. Hey everybody, welcome to the New to You Show. We are a review podcast where we check out cool stuff that may or may not be new to you. We've been doing some high fantasy stuff, and we're 4 through. Brian's been our guest for this run. It's been a great run so far. Brian, we'll get you back on.
Sure.
Good one.
Heck yes.
Keith, you're up on deck. Let's roll right into your pick for high fantasy.
Let's do it.
Hi, I'm Jeff Smith, the author of the graphic novel series Bone. The Bone books are about 3 lost cousins who find themselves in a mysterious valley where they meet monsters and dragons and princesses, and they uncover a few secrets along the way.
It was actually a pretty easy pick for me because I love this. In fact, I thought I was going to have to fight for it. I thought other guys were going to try to get it in first. But I chose the comic book Bone by Jeff Smith. For a long while, through most of it was self-published. It was published by Jeff Smith himself. Started in 1991. Made 55 issues. It lasted all the way till 2004. So it's a pretty good long, like a 13-year run. For the longest while, it was published by Jeff Smith, but it eventually was he partnered up with Image and released a bunch through them. It's a really odd book for a lot of reasons. The artist and writer Jeff Smith, I think his background is he was an animator, a cartoonist. A lot of his influences were comics from the 50s and 60s and early 70s by Walt Kelly, this series called Pogo, and also this fella named Carl Bark, who did Scrooge McDuck. And also, which is an interest, what makes this so interesting, one of his other big influences on this comic itself is Moebius, the French comic book artist and writer. During its run, this book won 10 Eisner Awards, which has got to be something else. It's an odd mix because the main characters are these very cartoon characters. They look like something out of like Hanna-Barbera or even like early Warner Brothers type characters. They're cartoons. They're not like humans at all. Even they're kind of like these other kind of creatures. And they've been kind of kicked out of their place, which is called Boneville. They're the Bones. Their last names are Bones. They're cousins,
And they look like bones.
and they're bone colored, I guess, right?
And they kind of like, they also have that shape of like...
Oh,
Like a cartoon bone, like
Right.
I
and
never
they're
put
white.
that together. The way their nose pokes out, and then
Yeah, they kind of have the bump of the head and the
Yeah.
bump of the like
Nose.
snout.
I
Yeah.
never saw it like that, but yeah, it makes perfect sense. I think our main character is the character named Phone Bone, who's kind of the straight man of this group, and he's constantly dealing with the machinations of his kind of greedy cousin, whose name is Phony Bone, who got them kicked out of their town in the first place. And his other cousin is a fellow named Smiley Bone, who's kind of your X Factor. He's kind of a cross between Harpo Marx and like Goofy. He's always getting into trouble.
Right.
And
It's like a very Ed, and Eddie like
Mm.
trio as well.
except I don't think Ed, and Eddie really had like this straight man kind of character that Phone is.
One of the Eds is like more the more nervous guy would probably
okay.
be like if you were to amplify the sort of nervousness of
the Bones.
of Phone Bone, then that would be like not double D but just single D Ed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So these guys get lost, and wind up in this valley. Once they get there, it's you learn through context that their Boneville, where they're from, is kind of a little bit more modern, kind of like our world. I think they don't really have a lot of kind of like fish out of water moments in that regard, but they do mention from time to time that there's like a pizza in a cup type of a restaurant, I think they refer to. There are a couple of like restaurants, and I think one of them mentions an arcade. There's like modern type stuff that is in their world that once they get to the valley is suddenly like a kind of a medieval kind of a place, third Earth kind of a thing.
It's almost like kind of like Smurfs in that way
Yeah.
too, where the Smurfs have like they have construction guys and like these things, but they're all a miniaturized, like somewhat more advanced world
Than the
within a
world.
larger medieval like
Kingdom.
standard
Yeah.
fiefdom kingdom. Yeah.
They're very Smurf-like.
They
in their
look a lot
design,
like
yeah.
Smurfs, yeah. That is true. Which was German originally. Smurfs were German, I think. What starts off as a kind of like just kind of a seems like a entry level comic with the antics of these three characters trying to make it in this kind of medieval realm and stumbling into this family where quite early stumble onto this farm and become a part of this family. The comic eventually through a long time evolves into this wildly epic fantasy of like good versus evil. It's pretty amazing, involving dragons, the Lord of Locusts, these like rat creatures, which are
great characters.
I love them and so well designed. I just love their designs. And the rat creatures are both menacing and also kind of comedic at the same time. But they can be wildly.
They're kind of like the Wile E. Coyotes.
Well, I mean,
but they can be menacing at times.
The two are kind of like Wile E. Coyotes, but all the other hundreds of rat creatures are very kind of like vicious and quite scary.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the Max too, like the Izzes.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
This sort of like fantasy epic world where you have at the end of this tale too, the woman is the one who's really like it's Julia's story, and Julie is the.
That's true. There
hero,
are a lot of parallels there.
Where Max is more like Max is the bones, where he's the facilitator of the tale, and really he's just like really what the twist is that the bones and in Max too, they're the like guardians, and you're just kind of getting their perspective when in most tales you would be following the hero more directly, where here you're kind of following the guardian who's almost like a slight like just a step off to the side from the full tale.
Yeah,
they still get into danger and they still become part of the epic beats, but they're more behold, like the tale is things are happening more to this person. They just happen to be along for the
you're referring to Thorn in this case?
Yeah.
Thorn.
Yeah.
Would be that.
So they kind of all get a crush on this character named Thorn, who's the granddaughter of this the lady who runs this farm which they kind of settle into. Early on, a lot of the story is driven by the phony bone character placing a bet on the big cow race, and they're going to pretend to be a cow and throw the race, all this stuff. But like I said, without you noticing it, it just becomes this much more vast story, this darker thing with really, really epic undertones, and it reveals a history the history of this valley and of the characters in it is revealed in a really neat way. It's just a really very elegant. The whole thing is very elegant, and just it unfolds, I think, masterfully. If anything, I think that if I had one complaint about it, I would say that by the end it loses some of the whimsy that I really liked about the beginning. But I mean, the art in this thing just gets better and better and better, and it starts off really great. And it just gets better and better and better. And so much of the design is so cool. The costumes are well made. All the drawings and all the, you could just take a panel out of this thing and it's just a piece of art. It's just so beautiful. Like everything is so well composed and done with an efficiency that's should be studied. It's just amazing.
And great, like throughout the series. I mean, like you said, it loses some of that towards the end, but throughout the series, there's also great comedic moments.
Yeah.
Like just like laugh out loud, funny stuff.
Literally laugh out loud, which is so hard to achieve in a comic book. I like a lot of comedic things, but I mean, it's very hard to find a legitimately funny thing in a comic book, and this is filled with it.
Yeah, and I feel like you see the influence of comic strips in that sense. There are a lot of like kind of 3 or 4 panel setup gag kind of things that are very reminiscent of great comic strips. And so he manages to be both a great comic strip, cartoony cartoon, and this epic fantasy all into one. And I think it's the mashup of those genres that make it constantly surprising and delightful. And
it's probably the
delightful is a great word for
because I think, and Jules, you can speak to this more, but there's like a strong European tradition, like for this sort of using the medium
Asterix
of
and
comics,
Obelisk kind of thing,
right? Tintin,
Hairs,
and all this stuff is they're use this medium just like you think of anime telling a certain sort of tale, or manga telling a certain sort of tale. The European comics are a medium that are used for this certain tale, and it's not. We don't often get that in the U.S. Like the sort of story. Like there are people telling all sorts of tales, like and all sorts of indie publishers, but he's probably the most successful in I don't know about financially, but in terms of just making a tale that incorporates all those aspects you guys just listed off, while being like highly artistically in like maintaining high artistic integrity integrity and just basically maintaining the art form and maintaining the art form as it serves the story. It's all in there, and it's something like it's probably the most European American comic that we've got.
I think that's true. I think he's also very much, and you also don't see that as often in the U.S. He's an auteur, like he did both the writing and like he did it all himself, more or less. And you see that a lot in Japan and in Europe, but not so much here.
Like the mangaka.
It's usually separated.
And one of the things that it reminds me of Calvin and Hobbes in that way, in that the artist himself said, "No, this is finished. If I do, he did do like an interesting prequel involving the sisters Rose and Briar."
Right.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was just a short little thing. But other than that, he's kind of like saying like, "No, I'm not going to just kind of keep churning these out. It's done. It's a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that's that." I have a lot of respect for that. That's not an easy thing to do when it's easy money for him to just make a new Bone thing anytime he wanted to. You know what I mean? If he were to make Bone Volume 2, it would be, like I said, just easy money. But he chooses to keep it.
I mean, he
the way
does
it
maintain. There's a website he maintains called bonezone.com.
Cool.
It's a little bit. I mean, it's some very European
Sounds like a big money.
traditions that he's
Sounds like a
maintained.
big money maker.
Yeah. I wonder where that goes. Let's go to bonezone.com.
Let's type it in. Let's do it together.
Let's open an incognito window.
But check it out. Anybody who
Oh, it's available.
anybody who's interested
What about
in
Bone Dash Zone?
Yeah.
Space Zone. But anyone who's interested in comics should really just check this out. Anybody who's interested in storytelling should check this out. And honestly, what I think is underappreciated with this is this in betweenness that I think is handled so well in this. Yeah, I kind of think that if this were a movie or I'm working in some TV stuff, and I feel like everyone is always, well, what is it? Is it a comedy or is it an adventure? Everybody wants these like tightly compartmentalized things, and I think that what this does so well is it bounces back and forth all the time. And there are parts in it that are truly frightening. There are parts of it that are truly hilarious. There are parts of it that are truly touching. And I just don't think that it's something like this could happen unless it was just a guy on his own making it.
When you describing it that way, also, like I realized, like, well, that's what makes Adventure Time so successful.
Yeah.
Right.
And Adventure Time also started out being like, oh, this is
Just
silly,
a goof.
This is a silly, zany thing, and then it unfolded this kind of deeper, darker narrative.
Very vast, large.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, I'm assuming it must not be that successful anymore because Cartoon Network very rarely shows Adventure Time anymore right now, and I don't know what it is.
It's had a long run, and maybe
Certainly, but I don't think it was losing any steam. Maybe I don't have the data.
They're doing like longer, like direct-to-video type movies for it too. Like there are long-form, like DVD only things. Possibly, I think they're DVD only, but there's some like just they might show them on Cartoon Network and then they'll be on. I don't even know if they stream them.
I think too, the longer a show runs, the more expensive it becomes. Just because I think everyone, like every time you get re-upped, you get more money for the voice talent, for the artists, all that stuff. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just getting more expensive to produce. I don't know.
Plus, I mean, it's been on for many years, and
Well, I don't want to get on a tangent, but I do feel like it's been our experience that the second season gets less money.
Yes.
Yeah. So
No, but I'm saying for a hit show like this.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Where I think like like when it's really hot, like in those middle
costs,
seasons,
certain costs go up.
Yeah.
Right. 'Cause you got to retain the voice talent, for example. But it's
Just
probably
when
not that much.
contracts start happening. Yeah.
But to get back to Bone, another thing that is really great about it is there's a lot of like breathing room in the comic. There's a lot
Yeah.
of like silent moments, and I don't know. I also
Sweet
don't get
moments.
I don't get that feeling in a lot of comics, especially this genre. Like you get that more in like indie comics that are like definitely more adult,
Yeah.
like whereas this is like more, I think this is like, that's the other great thing about it. It's kind of an all ages story and it works at a lot of different levels. And I don't know, I would be curious I'm both like afraid of adapting this into, an animated film or something like that, but also very curious as to what that would look like. But I think it would be hard to do.
I
don't
keep
know.
coming
I
back
don't think
to
so. It wouldn't be that hard.
Well,
because
it
the
would
way
be hard.
it's,
It would be hard to capture everything about it in a more condensed form, in some sense.
I think you wouldn't try to condense it. Like you would just expand
Do
it.
like a series, you mean?
Yeah, you blow it up. Like because
But then you couldn't do it to the quality level that I would want on that budget.
Like
I
the
don't
dragon
know.
stuff. And...
I don't.
I would want it to look really, really good.
Well, I mean,
I
there's
think
there's a series. Oh, go ahead, Holt.
Yeah, I think there's a simplicity to the principal characters,
Mhm.
and there's a certain way that he draws that you're like, is this a guy an animator? Like it's
Yeah.
pretty clear that he's very aware of the dimensionality of his characters and
Mhm.
and
No,
their
absolutely.
silhouettes, and I don't know. I think there would be a way to pull it off with like rubber costumes that you can make.
Yeah.
Which you can buy on the Bone Zone.
Yeah.
No, the
Bone Dash Zone is just some weird message board. I'll have to dig in deeper to figure out what it is, but it's like there's nothing. It's not sexy. It's weird. All I saw was Crystal Pepsi Mega Thread, but it's like a weird message board.
you
I
think
don't know.
drinking Crystal Pepsi makes you look cool? I would just worry about it being turned into a. I'm very satisfied with it as a comic. I'm like,
Yeah.
If Jeff Smith himself decides, hey, let's make it into a movie, and he spearheads it, then I'd be like, I would give that a shot. But
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
only thing you can do is tarnish it at this point. It's so
That's
good
true.
that there's no way to. You're not going to
Mm.
get better than the book.
Yeah. And it's also like, I think.
Well,
I mean,
the
you
thi-
might
You gotta
reach a
knock
broader
it.
audience.
You gotta knock
Yeah.
it down before you build it up. The idea is that you do the bad version, and then
That's
everything will
true.
be compared to the bad version.
The
right?
Spider-Man effect.
Yeah.
But I at the same time, I feel like the story is weird enough and everything. I don't know if it would really, reach that broad of an audience.
Yeah,
Even
exactly.
even if it was done
Exactly.
successfully.
Because there's like a style juxtaposition as well, where you do have characters that are to use the Three Stooges analogy or the Marx Brothers. Marx Brothers are these clowns
Mm-hmm.
that are inserted into real situation. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
a day at the races.
Well, it's like
Mhm.
Bugs
And we
Bunny. It's
introduce-
just like you take Bugs Bunny, you drop him here. This time it's a bullfight. This time it's
Right.
a property dispute.
And
whatever.
sometimes it's other silly characters, but most of the time it's like here a lot of the things are very real, and it's our cartoon character that is kind of either making things wackier or they're the wrench in the machine
Yeah.
of what should be a normal love story.
Yeah.
Or should be like they're the guys that actually complicate and become like a fun, interesting distraction to the tale.
I was wondering if it would be better just to make just spin off and do like Boneville the series, and you're just in Bone World, and 'cause I feel like that you couldn't really go wrong with that in a
Yeah, like
sense.
Bone Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The animated
There you
series.
go, Bone Zone.
Brian, have you read or seen the Bone stuff at all?
I mean, just in the past, but I never really dug deep into it. My curiosity is just like, so it was released in '91, you said?
Yeah,
Originally,
he's
yeah.
Okay.
self-published to begin with. Like he really slaved on this thing.
It
Yeah.
also there was
solo for a long time.
I do remember there was quite a period of time where there was like a wait for
Yeah.
there was a
Like,
lull.
It was a pretty like
Hmm.
you would see this cover and it's like, okay, there hasn't been some long time since this one cover came out.
Mhm.
Plus, man, I mean, I think probably the whole series had ended by the time I was reading it.
Mm.
I couldn't imagine reading an issue of that, and having to wait. It would drive
was-
me bananas.
It was kind of.
Mm.
I think I just stopped reading it for a while and
Yeah.
and just waited till it was done for that reason. But
Yep.
because I collected, I just happened to start reading comics when it was just starting. So I collected the first individual
Wow.
issue. So I have the first 10 maybe issues, and then after that I would kind of buy it sporadically, and then I just stopped and waited and then bought the collection once
Yeah.
it came out in
Mm.
2005 or whatever.
And I've been burned by that where it's like, you're 80 issues into an independent series and they've been pretty consistent and they're really getting into the meat of it
Mhm.
and they just disappear. Like
Or you're like 5 books into this epic fantasy novel
Yeah.
series, and then the 6th book is supposed to come out, and it just doesn't.
yeah.
Scud did that.
They finally got around to it.
Yeah.
It's called Community.
So, Jules, you collected it the first go round. I'm pretty sure that you were the one that got me into Bone. Either you or John or both of you. Did
don't
you?
know.
Did
I-
you
We
have
had-
it?
I think we had both read it
Yeah.
independently.
And I had read individuals, and then I don't even know if I bought them. Oh no, I owned a few individuals. I mostly read the graphic novel,
Yeah.
like compilations.
That's
That was-
kind of how I do all comics now. I'm just kind of done with little books. I just
Yeah.
kind of want the big fat book. I'm gonna call it
they're-
a day.
Yeah, the individual issues are not very satisfying to read.
No.
It's just not enough.
Yeah, it's only, and again, if there were still people making like your Squeeze or your JTHMs or something, like really dense indie little books, but most people that are doing that most of the people are making graphic novels because they want to tell a larger story, and it makes more sense to just release it in one go.
And most
Jim Mafood still makes some weird comics like that
But-
every now and
but
then.
most of the
will,
people doing the shorter, weirder stuff are just doing webcomics now. There's a
Yeah.
lot of great webcomics
Yeah,
out there.
yeah, that's true. On the subject of, I believe I read that Nimona is going to be either a movie or a series.
Cool.
That web comic we like.
Yeah, that was so good, and that ended also. So
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
cool.
yeah, you can read the whole thing. That was great.
Cool. So where can people read Jeff Smith's Bone?
We were talking about the big one versus the small individual ones. I still recommend and stand by my recommendation of the Scholastic collection. It's all out. I think it's 8 or 9 volumes.
Well, also that way too, you can get one volume. And you aren't
absolutely,
fully
yeah.
invested, or go to
Mhm.
your local library.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's definitely how I would start. Is just like start with one, see if you like it, and move on from there. Because it's my opinion that it just gets better as it picks up steam. But some people might miss the kind of like I just thought this was 3 goofy guys, dealing with the kind of like family dynamic, and suddenly now there's dragons and crazy locusts and wars and burning down the valley.
You can also get the full color version in one volume now, and it's hardcover.
It must weigh a ton.
Yeah, it must, but it's considering it's hardcover all color, it's $95. That's not bad.
Yeah.
But I
You
mean
get it digitally as well.
that I don't know. But the black and white
Soft cover.
collected soft cover is only $30, and then you can get the individual smaller classic books for like $8 each. This is all on Amazon. So.
Yeah, and they're really nice. They got the like nice thick paper. It's really good. The big black and white one, the paper quality is not super great. It's a little pulpy. But I have both. I have the black and white and but it's just because I bought the black and white one, then I saw these color ones come out.
Oh, it is also available as Kindle editions. For
that's
$7
nice.
each. Either Kindle or Comixology. You can get them for a little less than $8 each. So that's cool.
Well, thanks for doing that homework, Jules. I
No
appreciate
problem.
that.
All right.
Informing the masses.
Cool. All right. Good pick, Keith.
Thanks, man.
Jeff Smith's Bone.
Yes.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. And it's funny because you said like, oh, I'm surprised nobody picked it, but it's weird. It didn't come to mind when someone said high fantasy. I think I just, I just have too strong of an association with high fantasy being like Lord of the Rings. That like my mind goes in that kind of realm. And so when you put Bone on there, I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, it is high fantasy, but it again because it's kind of sneaky about it. I just didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, there's dragons and
And it's true that
ghosts.
really like it's like you're seeing a hero's journey, but from the sidekick's point of view. It really does feel that way because Thorn does go through that whole hero's journey. Like she's kind of like
knocking through it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Good stuff.
I guess I could have talked about Whack Fu too. This French cartoon I really like. Could have been high fantasy.
It's like Flash.
Yeah,
Or
it's like
Flash.
Flash or Harmony, one or the other. Yeah,
Nice.
really beautifully designed, based on an interesting game called Dofus.
All right. Good pick, Keith.
She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes.
Smiley Bone, Phony Bone, am I gonna have to separate you two?
Hey, Phony, the coast is clear. Look at him. We got chased out of Boneville 2 weeks ago, and he's still moping around. Oh, well, I guess you can whine all you want when you're the richest guy in the whole town.
Ah!
Oops, silly me. Ex-riches.
They can't do this to me! You can't do anything to a rich person that he doesn't want! So a couple of shady business deals went sour. Is that any reason to run the most beloved bone in Boneville out on a rail? Yes.
Beloved, the mayor declared a school holiday just so the kids could come and throw rocks at you.
To such a question, there are right and different, and there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial and error, just emotion when I do this. Focus on each beat, more so than you're wasting time in front of your television. Maybe I'm faking it.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of the New Year Show. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho and on Instagram at board_ghost. And you can listen to my podcast at boardghostworld.com, which is an RPG podcast that I also do. Keith, where can people find you?
You can find me at earthlingkeith.com. And Jules?
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Beautiful Jules. And how about you, Brian?
You could find me at allowroar.com or through anything that's a low roar, and then also through Punch the Devil.
Nice. Last man up. What is new to me this week?
Yeah, what's
Who do
new to
you,
you,
John?
John?
This is a little bit of cross promo.
Whoa.
We've been playing a lot of new games on Board Ghost, and we just played a new one that'll air, I don't know, in a couple weeks or something, called The Skeletons. It's by Jason Morningstar. It's an earlier game, I think. I don't know exactly when he published it. It's a very short game, short set of rules, and the concept is that you are all skeletons you basically draw a little map of a tomb, and you say where you are in this tomb, and you have your character sheet is just a list of questions that you can answer over the course of the game, and you turn the lights off, and then one person picks who your intruders are. You turn the lights on and say, awaken and protect the tomb, spiritual guardians or skeletal guardians, and you are now animated and compelled to repel or destroy the invaders of this tomb. And the invaders they're just like a sort of randomish list. It can be rats. It could be like a family seeking shelter from a storm. And you are these skeletons, and you're only animated when the tomb sort of wakes you up to defend it. And you only are aware in those moments as well. And then so once you've destroyed or repelled the invaders, the intruders, you then just fall back into slumber. And that's when you actually, depending on how long the passage of time is, you turn off the lights and wait for, if it's a week, it could be 20 seconds in the dark. Or if it's a century, it could be 3 minutes in the dark, or centuries, or a millennia. And then depending on how much time passes, the tomb could be falling apart, and things can be happening around you. And as you go through this thing, you also start to answer these questions and remember who you are a little bit, and what relationships you had to these other skeletons when you were alive. And it kind of starts to fill in the seams about why you are in this tomb at all, and why you're defending this thing and what's going on. But inevitably the tomb will be desecrated after, so much time, after centuries or millennia or whatever. It's gonna be desecrated, and your bones will be scattered, and that'll be it. And that's how the story plays out.
So no happy endings for the skeletons.
No happy endings for the skeletons. I mean, they're
I
already
guess they're
skeletons.
released. I guess they're released.
Yeah, they're free from their compulsion. But yeah, it's a fun game.
So how do you fight against a thing? Pretend it's a chicken that comes in.
A chicken comes in. So you would say, in this, there's a couple ways to do it. You can kind of have one of the people, kind of their skeleton doesn't animate, and they kind of play the intruder, and you just kind of take turns saying what your skeletons do, what the intruder does. And, rats. There are lots of them, and they're agile, and they're fast. How does a bunch of skeletons do you deal with this? Giant spiders. How do you deal with these agile, fast, intelligent things? Or a spirit that when the tomb was created has been awakened and is revolting. So how do you deal with something that's immaterial? And then other stuff when a family enters, maybe someone in the tomb, one of the skeletons has a connection to it somehow. And how do you deal with that? But you still have to follow your compulsion and repel or destroy the intruders. So there can be things that vie. Your ancestors arrive in the tomb with a map. So now you're destroying your own ancestors because the thing compels you, but so you're aware of this, and it's can be interesting to see how do you deal with these things? How do you deal with the threats to the tomb? But you just say here's what I do, and you just try to problem solve, and you can have your characters in and amongst yourselves.
Do you have rounds?
Sort of. It's you more just kind of play until you solve it or you don't, and then you either go to darkness or the game is over.
And to hear it play out, go download Board Ghost Ghosts
Go to
podcast.
boardghosts.com. This will be the Skeletons games. There'll be 2 episodes so far that we've played of it, but 1 story.
How did you
Looking
physically
forward
do
to
the recording and stuff?
We just recorded it. You just like there'll be pictures of the map or whatever, but we just kind of said a lot of the stuff we were
Got it,
doing
yeah.
and took turns and
they're
we
just,
turned the light off, but we'll I'll figure out a mode for kind of having the silence,
Yeah.
like playing
And
cave
now-
sounds or something.
And now the light is off.
Yeah. Awaken, skeletal guardians. Arise and defend the tomb, skeletal guardians.
A slime comes.
Bloop, bloop, bloop.
I love the skeleton on the
Never ending. No. Last Unicorn?
no the skeletons in the there's a guy who does a skeleton on the podcast about the guy who falls through the land
Magic
of Foon.
Tavern?
Yeah, the Magic Tavern.
Oh,
There's
really?
a
He does a
skeleton. He's
skeleton.
awesome. He's like a workaday. Hey guys, how's it going? Just let me tell you, the slime came by over here. He tells the best jokes. It's just he's a really funny guy, and he knows he's like a low level.
Like you just said.
He's like,
It
you know what?
used to
People
work
could just
through
push
'em."
me over. Yeah, exactly. Takes me 15 years to put myself back together. Yeah, it's really funny.
Cool.
Yeah, I look forward to listening to that.
Yeah. So
Couple
that'll be
weeks.
out in, probably 2-3 weeks from when this comes out. But yeah, cool. So next week we'll have a new
New
topic
topic, which
and
is
a new start to that topic,
Mhm.
which is, and we're going to have a topic of Lost and Forgotten, and I'm going to be up first with Peter Jackson's 1995 documentary, in quotes, about Mackenzie, the Charlie Mackenzie. I forget I should look up what his name is. But anyhow, go find out.
famous Kiwi,
Go watch this amazing
Famous New
made-for-TV
Zealand
documentary.
famous New Zealand.
And you haven't said the title.
Oh, Forgotten Silver. It's available on iTunes right now. I think it's like $15 on iTunes. It's not ideal, but it is very fun. And if you are a Peter Jackson fan, there are other ways to find it, and I trust you, internet savvy folk, to do that. But otherwise,
No,
pay
wait,
for your
wait,
ignorance
wait,
with
wait,
$15.
If you're a Peter Jackson fan, but like before the Lord of the Rings, because I feel like
We'll get
it's
in,
like
we'll
a
get into
different
all
thing.
this
Okay.
in the next episode.
Yeah.
Forgotten Silver, Peter Jackson. Go check it out. To find out more about the topics and the people in the show and all that stuff and high fantasy and what we have going on next week, go to newtoyoushow.com. You can leave comments on our website, or you can also leave comments on iTunes and rate and review on iTunes.
Or through the Apple Podcast
Or
app.
through the Apple Podcast app. And you can also follow us on Twitter at newtoyoushow.com, or no, at newtoyoushow, what I'm talking about. And yeah, that's about it. Those are the good things. We'll have some more stuff for y'all next week.
That's right. Come on back.
All right. It may not be new, but
Maybe
maybe
it
it
was
was
new to
you.
Explosion sound.
Pitiful life is all about the music. This 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 pitiful life is all about the music.
With him together forever, without the limitation of time, ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not dead. They're two separate entities.